astonishing week. It is very good to be among comrades today. Delegates, I want to put on record my appreciation and admiration for the work of the FBU and your members. And under Matt's leadership, without doubt, over the past few years, I think this union has really gone from strength to strength. I was very proud to help launch your brilliant anti-cuts tour at Congress last year, and that campaign has saved fire stations from Gosford, Sunderland, Wallsend, and that means that your campaigning has saved lives too. So thanks for everything that you do on behalf of our movement. And if I can add to that thanks, that brilliant exercise in Merseyside firefighters refusing to act as bailiffs for the likes of this government and their mates, I would like to add my sincere congratulations to that too. Now, I've been quite busy yesterday on this issue of trade union rights, so I just want to start straight away by saying that in turn, I want to offer 100% support to all those firefighters and control staff who have taken industrial action over the last few months. Whether it's defending pensions or shift patterns, I want to make something absolutely clear, that workers taking strike action, exercising that human right to withdraw your labour, will always be able to count on the support of the TUC. So conference, here we are, 6 days on from what without doubt was an extraordinary general election, and I think it does rank alongside those defining moments in our political history. And let's not beat around the bush. Last Thursday delivered great news for the bankers, the tax dodgers, and the media barons, and bad news for all of us, because whichever way you dress it up, the Conservative Party won a clear majority of seats. And I'm not sure that too many of us saw it coming on the day, certainly not the pollsters, certainly not my mates who were texting me just after that exit poll came out, and I think the most concise text of all I received was WTF. I'm still trying to work out what that stands for. And not even the organisation that I have come to trust most on these sorts of kind of issues, and that's Paddy Power. Nobody got it right. Now, I realise that in what I'm going to say, my analysis, if you like, of what went wrong may not be shared by everybody today, but I hope and think that we can have an honest dialogue about that, and I want to tell you what I think happened. I want to share with you what I think we need to do, and whether it's today, or later on, I hope that you will share your views with me. Now, the big news, of course, big news of the night, was SNP sweeping the board in Scotland, and undeniably, the mood has changed profoundly in Scotland. And I would say that the SNP's leader, Nicola Sturgeon, was probably the standout star of the campaign. Labour was caught by that devastating pincer movement, an unstoppable SNP on the one hand, and a right-wing English nationalism on the other. Fuelled by the Lib Dem collapse, fed by UKIP, but given its lifeblood by a shameless conservative scaremongering which questioned the very legitimacy of democratically elected Scottish MPs. But we also have to be honest and realise that the Tories talked up that issue about Labour being propped up by a party committed to putting Scotland first, because in many parts of England, people feared that they would be put second. Stoking up resentment, encouraging working people to compete against each other for funding, and feeding a culture whereby allegiance to country trumped loyalty to class. And in his acceptance speech, David Cameron invoked one nation conservatism. But the truth is, conservative politics have always been and will always be about divide and rule. And I don't know when or whether the SNP will press for another referendum. I don't know whether the Conservative and Unionist Party, so-called, will preside over the ultimate breakup of the UK. But we shouldn't be surprised if the Conservatives offer fiscal autonomy, not because they support self-determination for Scotland, but because it suits their narrow party political interests to do so in England. We should also be clear that this would impact in different ways on working people in every part of the UK. Then on Sunday, of course, we had Tony Blair launching the battle to write the story that Labour lost because it was too left-wing. He is wrong. In my view, he is wrong. Any Labour manifesto worthy of the name should be about building homes, should be about raising wages, and should be about protecting the NHS. That's what I call real aspiration. If anything, I believe a key problem was Labour's early failure to counter that Tory mantra that the deficit was caused by too much spending on public services. I also believe that the admission that Labour had been too soft on banking regulation when it was in power came far too late, and that too much ground was given to the economics of austerity when in fact the only hint of growth we've had in the last 5 years was when George Osborne temporarily eased his vicious programme of cuts. I think there were other factors at play. It's true that leadership matters. It does matter. But I don't propose, personally, to indulge in that ugly sport of attacking Ed Miliband, and I'll tell you why. It's because I think there's been more than enough of that from the non-dom owning press without the left joining in. Now, of course Ed had his weaknesses, but he is an essentially decent man, more to the point, with decent values, and we allow those values to be rubbished at our peril. Another factor, nearly 4 million votes won by UKIP. The politics of scapegoating immigrants and crude attempts to ditch EU membership obligations like workers' rights to paid holidays and health and safety, they will need our urgent attention. But perhaps the most difficult election outcome that we in the trade union movement need to face up to is that many who had voted Labour in 2010 this time turned to the Tories. Now, all of this suggests to me that the reasons why Labour lost are not simple or easy to explain away. And we can't just look at the party either. I think it means that we as a trade union movement, in respect of our values, our organisation, our membership, we've got a lot of rebuilding to do. Now, some people will say that the answer to Labour's predicament will be a new party of the left. Fair enough, that's a conversation that needs to be had. But it's not a view that I share. I firmly believe that Labour remains the best chance of winning political representation at Westminster, something the trade union movement has fought for over generations for the mass, the great mass of working people in this country. Labour has been written off before and it's bounced back before. But I'll be blunt enough, it's going to be bloody tough this time. And while others agonise about the future of Labour and the leadership there, frankly, comrades, we have got our work cut out fending off Tory attacks in the here and now. So we're going to have to stick together through the difficult days, weeks and months ahead. As the old saying goes, united we stand, divided we fall. We will need that unity and discipline to exploit and take advantage of each and every pressure point on this new Tory government. I don't underestimate this new government's cunning, but don't overestimate its strength either. They may be ruthless, but they are not invincible. Firstly, remember this will be a weak administration with a smaller majority than the previous coalition, in fact a smaller majority even than John Major had. Now, the SNP sought office with the promise that they would keep Labour's feet to the fire. But now we know that the real battles of the next Parliament will be blue on blue. Without the Lib Dems as a kind of human shield, Cameron will feel the full force of his own backbenchers. Some of them, we know, still want to hug a hoodie. A lot more of them make Norman Tebbit look like a bleeding heart liberal. Secondly, Cameron has already said he will not stand another term. That means that the contest for the next leader of the Conservative Party has already started, and it will last a full 5 years. In fact, the only face I saw on election night that looked more disappointed than Nigel Farage was that of Boris Johnson. And thirdly, there's that European referendum, and be in no doubt the Tories will tear themselves apart. Of course, nobody's under any illusions that Cameron's troubles mean that we're in for an easy ride. The PM's talk of healing and compassion was about as convincing as Margaret Thatcher reciting the St. Francis prayer. We know that the NHS is a prime target for privatisation. We know that £12 billion of cuts to welfare will hit in-work benefits and child benefit as well as the young unemployed. And of course, we also know all too well that the FBU is among those in the front line of Tory plans on industrial action. Not just to ban strikes by the back door, because you know you can beat those ballot thresholds, even if others can't, but to give bosses more ways to break strikes, and what's more, to criminalise pickets into the bargain. The Tories' plans represent the most draconian, the most aggressive, the most right-wing assault on basic labour rights anywhere in Western Europe. But conference, I want you to join me in saying this to Mr. Cameron. If you think we're going to give up our freedom of speech, if you think we'll surrender the human right to protest against workplace injustice, if you think we're going to give up our right to strike without a fight, you better think again. Now, brothers and sisters, we know that this is a crucial time in our movement, and most of all for the 6 million people that we represent and all working people. None more so than the men and women in your union still having to get to grips with the destruction wrought by the last government. Now, during the 2010 election campaign, you'll remember this one, David Cameron promised firefighters in Carlisle that there would be no cuts to emergency frontline staff if he won. Conference, he lied. Overall funding for the fire service cut by over a fifth, with further cuts to come. And with vultures like the Specialist Group International hovering over fire services like Surrey, the mission of this new Tory administration is clear enough. More privatisation, more cuts, more attacks on your terms and conditions, including, of course, pensions. And a dispute stretching back 2 long years, changes imposed last month without your agreement, never mind that sham guarantee from former Minister Penny Mordaunt. Because, of course, we all know what it's about: pay more, work longer, get less. And plainly, that is not fair. The same goes for the dispute affecting your members in fire control in Essex. Most of them women, many of them mothers, but in my view, each and every one of them an inspiration. You know better than me the story, around 180 jobs at risk, despite reports that 1 in 6 shifts already understaffed, a state-of-the-art IT system in complete disarray, and changes to shift patterns having a devastating impact on family life, despite the FBU putting forward a clear alternative on the table that was cost neutral. Dedicated staff deserve better than this, and together we have to be determined they will get it. The challenges facing firefighters, control staff, at heart, are no different to the challenges facing all public service workers and, in fact, workers right across the economy. And as a trade union movement, I think the lessons are clear. We have to organise hard to win the trust of workers whichever way they voted in this election. And we have got to build up our industrial power. We've got to box clever in the corridors of power, building allies, confusing the enemy. And we've got some plans for that. And when the time is right, we will also have to campaign on the streets to defend decent jobs and wages, to defend rights at work, and to defend our public services. Now, at a special executive next month, a special executive of the TUC, I will be setting out proposals for how we do just that. But one thing I know for sure, delegates, is that women and men, black and white, young and old, in every part of the UK, our fortunes will always rise and fall as one. And that's why our values have never mattered more. Solidarity, compassion, and above all for the trade union movement over this next 5 years, unity. These are the values that bind you together as firefighters. It's what inspires us as trade unionists. And it's what makes our movement, and our movement is still, never underestimate it, we are still a powerful force for equality and justice. So let's stick together, let's campaign together, but most of all, delegates, let's get stuck in. Let's not waste any time. Let's get out there and fight for our people together. Thank you.